There are moments in life when the most decisive trials arrive without announcement. They do not come with thunder or visible signs. Instead, they unfold quietly within the fabric of ordinary relationships. A conversation, a choice, a reaction in a vulnerable moment becomes the stage upon which character is measured. The hidden test is rarely dramatic. It may appear as a simple opportunity to show patience, fairness, or loyalty. Because it looks ordinary, it is often dismissed. Yet it is precisely this ordinariness that gives the test its power. When no audience is present and no recognition is expected, the individual stands alone with conscience. In that solitude, the deeper layers of the personality emerge. What has been cultivated in silence speaks louder than public declarations. The hidden nature of the trial reveals whether virtue is genuine or merely performed. It exposes whether kindness is a principle or a convenience. In such moments, the soul is weighed not by grand gestures, but by subtle decisions that shape the direction of a relationship. The difficulty of these unseen tests lies in their intimacy. They often concern how one perceives another person. Instead of being tested through external challenges, one is tested through interpretation. Will they assume the worst or seek understanding? Will they react from wounded pride or respond with thoughtful restraint? The mind is quick to construct stories that protect the ego. Misunderstandings grow when assumptions replace honest reflection. In this way, failure does not erupt from deliberate harm, but from unexamined impulse. A person may believe they are acting rationally, while in truth they are defending an insecurity they have never confronted. The hidden test asks for clarity and self-awareness. It requires the courage to pause before judgment and to examine the source of one's reaction. Many fail not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack the discipline to look inward. When self-examination is absent, instinct governs behavior, and instinct is often shaped by past wounds rather than present truth. What makes these trials significant is that they reveal the invisible structure of character. When an individual is given a hidden test about another person, they are being asked to rise above their immediate emotions. They are invited to act from principle rather than from fear. If they fail, the failure may seem small, yet its meaning is profound. It indicates a gap between values professed and values practiced. Such a gap cannot be concealed for long. Relationships are sensitive instruments. They register insincerity and inconsistency with precision. The hidden test, therefore, becomes a mirror. It reflects the degree to which a person has integrated their beliefs into action. Success in these moments strengthens trust and deepens connection. Failure weakens the foundation quietly. Thus, the ordinary interaction becomes extraordinary in consequence. It reminds us that the most important judgments in life occur not in public arenas, but in the quiet spaces between two souls. Failure often begins long before the visible mistake appears. It begins in the quiet corners of the mind where fear is allowed to settle without examination. Fear does not always announce itself clearly. It disguises itself as caution, logic, or even self-protection. A person may believe they are acting wisely when in reality they are retreating from vulnerability. When a hidden test arises, fear reacts faster than reflection. Instead of asking what is right, the anxious mind asks what is safe. Instead of seeking understanding, it seeks control. In relationships, this can manifest as withdrawal, defensiveness, or premature judgment. The individual may not intend harm, yet their behavior is guided by an inner alarm that has never been questioned. Because the fear remains unconscious, it feels justified. The person convinces themselves that their reaction is reasonable. Yet beneath the surface lies a deeper truth. They are protecting themselves from imagined loss, rejection, or inadequacy. The hidden test quietly measures whether they can rise above this instinct and act from courage rather than insecurity. Conscious intention alone is not enough to prevent failure. Many individuals sincerely believe they are good, fair, and loyal. However, sincerity does not eliminate unconscious influence. When fear operates in the background, it shapes perception. Neutral events begin to appear threatening. Simple misunderstandings are interpreted as betrayal. The mind, eager to defend itself, gathers selective evidence to support its anxiety. In this way, fear constructs a narrative that feels convincing. The person may speak confidently, even passionately, about their position, unaware that it is rooted in an old wound. The hidden test exposes this dynamic. It asks whether the individual can pause long enough to question their own certainty. Can they recognize that their strong reaction may reveal more about their past than about the present situation? Those who fail often do so because they never slow down to examine the source of their emotional intensity. They react first and reflect later, if at all. By then, the opportunity for growth has already passed. To overcome such a test requires inner discipline. It requires the courage to admit that one's first impulse may not be the truest response. This is not weakness, it is maturity. When a person learns to observe their fear without immediately obeying it, they create space for wisdom. In that space, compassion can emerge. Understanding can replace suspicion. Responsibility can replace blame. The hidden test, therefore, is not designed to humiliate but to reveal. It reveals whether fear governs the personality or whether awareness guides it. Failure is not inevitable, but it becomes likely when fear remains unexamined. The individual who does not confront their inner anxieties becomes a servant to them. Yet the one who dares to face them transforms fear into insight. In doing so, they pass the test not by perfection but by conscious choice. There is a subtle mechanism within the human psyche that shapes perception without our awareness. It is the tendency to project our inner conflicts onto others. When unresolved emotions remain unacknowledged, they do not disappear. They seek expression. Instead of recognizing them as our own, we often attribute them to someone else. A person who doubts their own worth may become quick to accuse another of disrespect. Someone who struggles with hidden resentment may suddenly perceive hostility where none was intended. This process feels convincing because it protects the ego from discomfort. It is easier to point outward than to look inward. When a hidden test arises in a relationship, projection becomes a decisive factor. The individual is asked silently to see clearly, yet clarity requires honesty about one's own inner state. If that honesty is absent, perception becomes distorted. The other person becomes a canvas upon which private fears and insecurities are painted. The failure does not occur because reality was threatening, but because illusion was accepted as truth. Projection is powerful precisely because it operates unconsciously. The person who projects is rarely aware that they are doing so. They experience their judgment as rational and justified. They gather selective memories and interpret neutral expressions as confirmation of their belief. In this way, the mind constructs a coherent story that feels objective. However, the emotional intensity behind the judgment often reveals its deeper source. When a reaction seems disproportionate to the event, it is usually fueled by something older and unresolved. The hidden test challenges the individual to recognize this disproportion. It invites them to pause and ask whether their response reflects the present moment or an unresolved past. Without this pause, projection continues unchecked. The relationship suffers because the other person is no longer seen as they truly are. They are seen through a lens clouded by personal history. Thus, misunderstanding grows not from malice, but from misperception. To overcome projection, requires humility. It demands the willingness to admit that one's certainty may be flawed. This is uncomfortable, for it challenges the image we hold of ourselves as fair and perceptive. Yet self-examination is the only path to clarity. When a person begins to question their automatic judgments, something transformative occurs. They reclaim responsibility for their emotions. Instead of accusing, they inquire. Instead of defending, they reflect. The hidden test, in this sense, is an invitation to psychological maturity. Passing it does not mean never misjudging another. It means being capable of recognizing the mistake and correcting it. When projection is withdrawn, relationships become more authentic. The other person is allowed to exist as an individual rather than as a symbol of our inner struggle. In this awareness, failure becomes less likely, and understanding becomes possible. Within every individual, there exists a dimension of personality that prefers to remain unseen. It contains impulses, weaknesses, and tendencies that do not align with the image one wishes to present to the world. This hidden dimension does not vanish simply because it is ignored. On the contrary, it gains influence when it is denied. In moments of pressure, especially within close relationships, this concealed aspect begins to assert itself. A hidden test often activates this buried material. The situation may appear simple on the surface, yet it touches a sensitive nerve deep within the psyche. Irritation arises unexpectedly. Defensiveness appears without clear cause. The person may feel justified in their reaction, unaware that something older and unexamined has been stirred. The concealed side of the personality seeks expression, and if it has never been acknowledged, it expresses itself indirectly. Thus, the failure does not emerge from deliberate intention but from unconscious influence that has long awaited an opportunity to surface. When the hidden dimension remains unexamined, it shapes behavior in subtle ways. A person who secretly struggles with envy may become critical of another's success. Someone who harbors unresolved anger may interpret neutral actions as provocation. These responses feel immediate and convincing because they arise from emotional layers that have accumulated over time. The individual may even believe they are defending principles, while in reality, they are defending an unrecognized wound. The hidden test exposes whether one has cultivated enough self-awareness to recognize this inner movement. Without reflection, the reaction feels natural and inevitable. Yet with awareness, the same reaction can be observed, questioned, and redirected. The crucial difference lies in consciousness. When the hidden side governs behavior unchecked, relationships become arenas for unresolved inner conflict. What could have been a moment of understanding becomes a moment of rupture. The individual fails not because they lack values, but because they have not integrated the parts of themselves that contradict those values. Integration requires courage. It means admitting that one is capable of pettiness, insecurity, and contradiction. Such admission does not weaken character, it strengthens it. When a person acknowledges their hidden tendencies, those tendencies lose their secret power. They can no longer operate from the shadows. In the presence of awareness, impulse slows down. Choice becomes possible. The hidden test then transforms from a trap into an opportunity. Instead of reacting automatically, the individual can respond deliberately. They can recognize the stirring of irritation or jealousy and decide not to let it dictate action. In this deliberate response lies growth. The concealed dimension is not an enemy to be destroyed, but a reality to be understood. When understood, it becomes integrated into a more balanced personality. In this balance, failure becomes less frequent, and the individual moves closer to inner coherence and genuine maturity. There is a subtle obstacle that often stands between a person and moral clarity, and that obstacle is pride. Pride does not always appear as arrogance. It can manifest as the quiet insistence on being right, the refusal to reconsider, or the discomfort that arises when one is challenged. In the context of a hidden test, pride becomes particularly decisive. The situation may require a simple admission of error, a moment of patience, or a willingness to listen. Yet the ego resists. It perceives correction as humiliation and compromise as weakness. Instead of asking what is true, it asks what preserves status. This shift in focus is almost imperceptible, yet it changes the entire outcome. The individual may defend a position long after doubt has appeared internally. They may sense that reconciliation is possible, but pride tightens its grip. In this way, the failure does not occur because truth was inaccessible. It occurs because humility was rejected. The ego thrives on certainty. It prefers clear divisions where one is justified and the other mistaken. Hidden tests, however, often unfold in ambiguity. They require openness rather than rigid conclusions. When pride dominates, ambiguity feels threatening. The person rushes to solidify their stance, to protect their self-image from fracture. They may reinterpret events in a way that supports their narrative. They may dismiss another's perspective without genuine consideration. This defensive posture feels strong, yet it is rooted in insecurity. True confidence does not fear examination. It allows questions to arise and listens without immediate retaliation. The hidden test quietly measures this capacity. Can the individual tolerate the discomfort of self-reflection? Can they endure the temporary vulnerability that comes with admitting imperfection? When pride answers no, growth is halted. The relationship bears the cost of that refusal. Humility, in contrast, does not diminish dignity. It refines it. To say, "I may have misunderstood," requires inner stability. To acknowledge fault requires strength greater than stubborn defense. When a person chooses humility in the face of a hidden test, something transformative occurs. Dialogue replaces conflict. Understanding replaces suspicion. The ego loosens its rigid hold, and space is created for mutual respect. Failure becomes less likely because the individual is no longer driven by the need to appear flawless. Instead, they are guided by the desire to be truthful. Pride isolates, but humility connects. In choosing humility, one not only passes the immediate test, but also cultivates a character capable of deeper trust. The hidden test, then, reveals whether the ego rules the personality or whether wisdom has learned to guide it with restraint and balance. Many people imagine that moral trials are dramatic events that unfold before an audience. They picture grand decisions made under intense pressure, visible to the world and worthy of recognition. Yet the most decisive tests are inward and almost invisible. They take place in the private dialogue between thought and conscience. When a hidden test emerges within a relationship, it rarely demands spectacle. It demands sincerity. A fleeting impulse to speak harshly, a temptation to assume the worst, or a quiet opportunity to act with fairness becomes the true arena of judgment. No applause follows the right choice, and no public shame exposes the wrong one. Because of this privacy, the inward trial carries greater weight. It reveals who a person is when reputation is not at stake. The absence of witnesses removes external pressure, leaving only internal guidance. In that silence, character either steadies itself or begins to fracture. The inward nature of such tests requires a developed inner life. Without reflection, the individual may not even recognize that a moral decision is unfolding. They may believe they are merely reacting to circumstances, yet every reaction contains a choice, even if it is brief. To pause before speaking, to reconsider an assumption, to choose restraint over impulse, these are quiet acts of integrity. When a person neglects their inner awareness, they drift into automatic behavior. Habit replaces deliberation. Emotional patterns repeat without question. The hidden test is then missed entirely because it is not perceived as a test. It passes like any other moment, yet it leaves a subtle imprint. Over time, these small inward decisions accumulate. They shape the tone of relationships and the direction of personal growth. What appears minor in isolation becomes significant in pattern. To succeed in an inward trial is not to achieve perfection, but to cultivate attentiveness. It is to recognize that the true battleground lies within perception and intention. A person who understands this begins to treat even ordinary interactions with care. They realize that every private choice contributes to their moral structure. When they fail, they reflect rather than deny. When they succeed, they do so quietly, without seeking validation. The hidden test, by remaining unseen, protects its authenticity. It ensures that the motive behind an action is genuine rather than performative. In embracing the inward nature of moral trials, one develops a steadiness that does not depend on external approval. Integrity becomes less about image and more about alignment between belief and action. In that alignment, the soul grows quietly but decisively, guided not by applause, but by conscience. Spiritual growth does not occur automatically with age or experience. It requires deliberate awareness and a willingness to accept responsibility for one's inner world. When a hidden test arises within a relationship, it quietly asks whether the individual has matured beyond blame. It is easy to attribute tension to another person's flaws. It is far more demanding to examine one's own contribution. Responsibility in this sense is not about accepting guilt for everything that goes wrong. It is about recognizing that every reaction originates within. The tone of voice, the interpretation of words, the decision to withdraw or to engage, these are personal choices. A person who avoids responsibility remains psychologically dependent. They wait for others to change before they themselves transform. In contrast, spiritual growth begins when one acknowledges that even in misunderstanding, there is something to learn about oneself. The hidden test measures this readiness to learn rather than to accuse. Awareness is the foundation of such responsibility. Without awareness, patterns repeat unconsciously. A person may insist that similar conflicts keep happening to them, unaware that their own unresolved tendencies contribute to the repetition. When the same emotional response surfaces again and again, it signals an inner theme seeking attention. The hidden test highlights this theme. It presents a familiar challenge in a new form and observes whether the individual will respond differently. To grow spiritually is to notice this repetition and pause. Instead of reacting according to habit, the person reflects. They ask what belief or fear is influencing their perception. They consider whether their interpretation is shaped by past experiences rather than present facts. This reflective stance transforms the situation from a mere conflict into an opportunity for development. Responsibility shifts from external correction to internal refinement. Taking responsibility does not mean tolerating injustice or ignoring genuine harm. It means maintaining sovereignty over one's own conduct. Even when another person fails, one can choose integrity. Even when misunderstood, one can choose clarity. This is the essence of spiritual maturity. The hidden test, though directed at someone else, also reveals the strength of your own foundation. Will you allow another's weakness to dictate your character, or will you remain anchored in your values? When responsibility is embraced, resilience follows. The individual no longer feels controlled by circumstances. They become conscious participants in their growth. Over time, this orientation creates stability within relationships. It fosters respect because actions are guided by principle rather than reaction. In this way, spiritual growth unfolds steadily, shaped by countless moments of self-awareness and the quiet courage to own one's inner life. When someone fails a hidden test concerning you, the immediate impulse is often to evaluate their character. You measure their words, their actions, and the gap between what they promised and what they delivered. Yet beneath this outward evaluation lies a more subtle question. What does their failure awaken within you? Every disappointment stirs something personal. It may awaken old memories of exclusion, betrayal, or neglect. The emotional intensity you feel is not created entirely in the present moment. It resonates with earlier experiences stored quietly within. In this sense, another person's failure becomes a mirror. It reflects areas of your own inner life that still seek understanding. The hidden test, though given to them, exposes your vulnerabilities as well. If you respond only with anger, you risk overlooking this reflection. If you pause and observe your reaction, you gain insight into your own unfinished work. The event becomes not only a judgment of them, but an invitation to examine yourself. This does not mean you are responsible for their mistake. It means you are responsible for your response. When resentment is left unexamined, it can harden into identity. You begin to define yourself by how you were wronged. This posture feels justified, yet it binds you to the moment of failure. Reflection offers an alternative. Instead of suppressing the hurt, you explore it. You ask why it feels so significant, why it touches something deeper than the immediate circumstance. Often you discover patterns. Perhaps you tend to trust too quickly. Perhaps you avoid clear communication and expect others to intuit your needs. These realizations are not self-accusations. They are insights that expand awareness. The hidden test thus reveals not only their limitations, but also your own areas for growth. It shifts the focus from blame to understanding, from reaction to reflection. In embracing this perspective, you reclaim power. You are no longer merely the recipient of another's failure. You become an active participant in your own development. Their inability to rise to the occasion does not determine your capacity for clarity or strength. Instead, it challenges you to deepen both. You learn to set boundaries where necessary, to communicate more directly, to trust with discernment rather than naivety. The mirror effect of their failure becomes constructive rather than destructive. It teaches you that every relationship contains lessons on both sides. When you integrate these lessons, bitterness loses its hold. What remains is a steadier sense of self, less dependent on external validation. In this way, the hidden test extends beyond the one who failed. It becomes a shared moment of revelation, shaping two paths in different ways and inviting each soul toward greater awareness.